Hey guys, what's up? It's Schla coming back to ya with another episode of Car Rides with Schla. And today I have just after this morning's recording changed the display zoom to um I have just changed the display zoom on my phone to be on the zoomed instead of the default. I had undid it actually, and I was on the default for a while on the Mini, and as it had turned out, that really wasn't making a ton of sense because on the Mini it just doesn't work out. Honestly, I don't know how else to, like, there had been numerous times where I had been trying to do stuff with the Mini, and I'm like tapping the screen and it's not going through, and it's taking a while, and so I decided to change over to the zoomed format because when pressing buttons and things, I know that it's just going to respond better for those moments. So, yep, today super easy day, as all the short days really are. And yeah, I don't know. Not too much to think about. I guess I've just been thinking a lot again about, because I did actually, yesterday's episode, I did end up inputting into GPT, and it wanted to it focused a lot on the fact that I was really like railing against myself when it came to a lot of the stuff about like worth and how, well, if I'm basically supposed to be sacrificed to the machine, then so be it. I can't do anything about it. And I mean, GPT correctly pointed out that I would likely be a part of the scientists or whatever who actually do, I don't know if get exempt is the correct term, but yeah, like I should be, and even now, like I could be doing something better, and I'm just not, due to societal inefficiencies. I mean, we've talked about this a lot before. I don't even, I would want to say it works relatively well. I don't think it works relatively well. I think people just assume that the system works relatively well, but it doesn't. We run into like a lot of problems, and there's still just like tons of issues with the system and how it functions and operates. Like, that is not, I don't think it's changing anytime soon, and that's just, I think that's just the nature of the beast, honestly. I don't really know how else to put it. It's just the nature of the beast. Plain and simple. Um but yeah, not really sure. I mean, a lot has happened. A lot has happened with me, like, emotionally, I guess, over this past period of time. It's interesting, it's interesting, all right. Yeah, I mean, I need to get in a riff here. I was like thinking of things to say, but now I'm talking, it's not really coming out. I I still feel the same way. Like, if I just had an extra 20,000, even if I didn't have it, but I had to just spend it, it would be good. I think I'd be very happy. I think in about a year, I will be pretty happy. As long as everything just goes like remotely the same and there's no insane economic or societal collapse or calamity, should be pretty okay. Like, I should be pretty happy again about like a year from now. I don't think there's I don't know, there's just not much else to that statement. But yeah, with what was taught about yesterday, I just want to push back, and kind of what I'm telling GPT is humanity may have very well ran its course. I don't know that we're actually in a better place. And so, yeah, of course, I'm capable of a better job. But that's not I've observed it, how things work, and often wealthier people, it's mostly luck, and it's work sometimes. Sometimes it's work, but it's not always work. It's definitely not always work. It's and that's, I don't know, that's the thing. It's like, how do you make sense of the world? How is it fair? How do you do this stuff? It's tricky. It's haphazard. It's not right half the time, and you try to figure things out, but most of the time, like, I'm just sitting here like trying to figure things out, and nothing's ever really getting anywhere. It's just like really a pretty annoying and frustrating situation. I don't really know how else to describe it. It's just like a huge big joke half the time. And my mind, it wants to make sense of things, and that's why I always resort to this tracking thing, because I still believe that, at least for me and a certain subset of the population, the tracking thing, it is better. It has its own flaws, but it's like a step forward. It truly is. It truly is just like a clear step forward. And I know GPT can argue with me and all this stuff, but it's just kind of the truth. Like, it is this clear step forward. That's what it is. Passing on the right. Going for a pass and jerking backwards and honking at me when there's traffic in front of me. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I'm going the same speed. Yeah, and then another it's like, dude, we're not going anywhere anyway. Now I just found my thing to riff on, and I just forgot it because of all these silly drivers. I just forgot about. I mean, I told myself a while ago I just wanted to start ignoring it, but as it turns out, what on earth could I have been talking about? Oh yeah. Okay, so there's this theory that it's basically like when behavior is monitored, like, it's no longer good behavior when it's forced. And I really want to push back, like, completely on that assertion and assumption. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it almost just sounds like this silly, like, philosophical wording kind of way of explaining it. I don't think it's actually true. Does that make sense? I mean, I just don't. I don't think it's actually true. And really what I mean by that is that if you can see things quantitatively, you can see things very clearly, crystal clearly, as a matter of fact. If we had a society where everything was forced, let's say, I've talked about this before, what was my, oh yeah, a seizure of autonomy. You know, personal autonomy is seized, and you basically have a brain implant that instead of you being able to do as you please, you end up doing what you should do. And like the argument is always, well, like love isn't love if it's forced. And well, a good deed isn't a good deed if it's forced. It's not. And a lot of this talking point, I actually used to kind of believe it. Like it kind of made a lot of sense to me. But as time goes on, it actually makes like much less sense to me. I just don't understand like how it works. Because you literally have proof against that being a thing. I might not be wording it completely correctly. I don't have the actual theory or the concept, but I know what it is, and I just think it's actually like completely incorrect. There is a result of an action, and the result of an action does matter. I mean, intent matters, but if somebody has like even the greatest of intentions and they keep messing up, or I mean, where do you draw a line? And when you try to quantify what a good deed is or what a loving action is, it just doesn't, you know why it's dangerous actually to see things in that way? Because human desire, I think, is less of a good verdict. That's why. I think human desire, it's actually a less reliable determiner. And that's the problem with what that theory does. Because what happens when you have a child who becomes addicted to TikTok and is really self-absorbed and rebellious, and you say, well, I'm not going to force him to do anything because, if it's forced, that's not really his true nature. To me, it's insane. Like, of course, you want to get a chip in that child's brain and steer him on the right track. And that has a manifestly and provably superior outcome to if we were not to do so. There's other certain examples, like if you have regulations in place where you can quantifiably see there is a lower environmental impact, things are more efficient, we're being less pollutive. That is an objective good, and it doesn't matter that it's people's intentions or not. Like, it doesn't matter that it wasn't people themselves who want to do it. Oh yeah, just because it's a rule and it's forced, now it's no longer a good thing. That's just like not making any sense to me. Again, it sounds like an interesting little thing on paper, and I think the reason why it's so interesting is because we're human, and humans kind of look and they search for these ways to like justify our own humanity. And everybody loves freedom. So the result is you come up with this ideology that says, oh, well, if it's not from the heart, then now the deed isn't necessarily good. Or if it's gamified because everything's on surveillance, now it's fake. It's not real love. Well, we're not seeing real love anyway. in this age of hyperindividualism, TikTok, hyperpersonalization, relationships are shorter than ever before, and people are more miserable and less able to even initiate relationships than ever before. So, what's the answer? The human heart is just as evil, and I would actually make the argument that through the human heart alone is more evil than a calculated response, because the human heart, it's completely messed up. Its priorities, its ability to function, it's crazy. And it's not good. But so you can't trust that. You can't trust human will. Human will does evil things all the time. And that's, it's almost like saying, like, I think there's a lot of instances where people only do things for social pressure anyway, and that's actually like a good thing. It doesn't become like insincere just because nobody's watching. It's almost like this silly philosophy. What it really ends up doing is it actually just platforms antisocial behavior, and it justifies the personalization of things. You notice that? Because it makes it so that things are fine. Everything's fine. That's what it's doing. It's making it so that you don't have to even conceive of these things. That's all I think it is. It's just some deranged, like, ultra modern concept, because it's like asserting or acting as if most good deeds are not socially motivated in the first place anyway. I think it's pretty provable that most good deeds happen in light of, like, social necessity. A lot of people behind closed doors will usually err towards the side of neutral or immoral. It's only a lot of times when you have some kind of tangible, like, and I mean, you see this talked about in religion, right? Because God in the Bible speaks about people pray in private. Don't make a show of things. Don't tell people about what you did. And that is like a pretty complicated concept, I think, for a human. I think it's like incredibly backwards. And that's really goes back into my saying about, a lot of what the Bible ends up talking about. It's actually a lot of really modern futuristic things. I think riddled in there is talks about, communal thought, some kind of a hive mind, because when you look at the change from, when you look at that change, the change from the 10 Commandments and do not do this, do not do that, and then that change to just love others, a commandment about how you treat others. That's like a clear archetypal switch. It's a clear switch from don't do this and focusing on the self to focusing on others. And that really seeds into the whole, like I said, abolishment of private property. It's all kind of laid out in the Bible. Like, very clearly. And I'm just realizing that's another thing that's sort of interesting, is it's putting an opposing view on human nature. But it doesn't work, because it's like, obviously that teaching is taught and people don't follow it. And what would be the result if all humans did? You know, maybe it's almost also a lesson on being vigilant. Being vigilant. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like saying, like, well, in your alone time, be good. Because you're not looking for credit or approval of other people. Or, you know, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go down with that teaching. And it is, I guess it's a valid argument to what I'm saying. It's a valid counter argument to what I'm saying, that, like, a higher human wouldn't need the surveillance or the tracking to do the right thing. I just feel like I don't understand it at this rate. Like, I witness it. I see how people drive. I see how people act. And they do a lot of things that are materially inefficient, materially destructive for the environment, financially. And how do you stop those things without a perfect system? Like, you have to have a perfect system in place in order to stop these things. And we don't have that perfect system. We definitely don't have that perfect system. But that's what's interesting about the Bible, is how radical the ideas are, and how they're not really, like, they're still not really being followed. They're just not. I mean, I don't know. And a lot of people who claim to be Christian would probably argue with me about a lot of these ideas, but I just think it's laid out right there in the religion. You know, I don't really think there's too much else to get into. It's just, you know, a lot of good ideas, but it's like people don't really listen to it properly, and instead just perpetuate the same old junk that doesn't even make any sense, you know. Whoa. Sorry, I'm just like not really too happy about this guy. Not too happy about him. Alright, anyways, sorry. Just concentrating on driving. Yeah, I mean, sadly, I don't really ain't too much of a talking. Like, I don't have a ton of things to say or anything like that. So, I'm trying, but, and I am actually pretty impressed with what I have come up with. I mean, it's pretty good stuff. It's kind of building off of what I said, but that is interesting how it could be seen as a step backwards, and how, like, personal intent, but personal intent, it's like we experimented with that. To me, that's like stupid. And I think GPT has talked to me about it before, where, like, GPT claimed it's difficult to quantify math. No, math? No. What am I talking about? It's difficult to quantify morals and ethics, and, like, what's ethically or morally correct. That's what I've heard from GPT. And I also think that is pretty easy to disagree with and just disprove. Like I said, there are just certain behaviors that have negative outcomes, and you have to come to terms with that. Like, it doesn't matter if, a person thinks a certain way or whatever. Like, no, like, certain decisions do have quantifiably negative outcomes, and therefore they should be seen as immoral. Like, I don't really... That's the definition for morality. Look at the outcome of the action, and then you'll see. And it's like, I just don't really understand how there's all these, like, arguments to be made about it that, like, honestly don't make a lot of sense. Like, they just don't make a lot of sense about that thing that I was talking about. Now, I don't know what I was talking about, but no, I'm kind of fooling around at this point. But I'm running low on steam. Just kind of just trying to think about things, So I didn't know if that guy was going or stopping. So I kind of hesitated, but he was letting me go. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't really. I feel like I can't. I'm making a lot of these arguments, but I'm not in the mind frame to really, like, make them or to cut through with them. It's just like, what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I don't know why my brain's like that. I mean, today was great, but Yeah, I'm sorry for all this silence. I'm just, like, thinking a lot. I'm having, like, a lot of thoughts about things that aren't even really interesting or even, like, worth talking about. So that's kind of what's going on. And obviously kind of messes with things a little bit, because I can't talk about them because they're they're boring. They're not even worth like talking about. So why would I be talking about what's on my mind? It just doesn't add up or make a lot of sense. So yep, I don't know, you try, but that's what I think there is like a big problem with that whole like intent, because I think if you had a society where everything was private and anonymous, I think that society would just collapse. Like, I don't think that would lead to anything good. I think it would lead to further, hyper personalization of things. And yeah, like that, it's not a good direction. Like, I can't fathom that is a good direction for things to go in. It's just like bottom line. Like, I don't see it. I don't understand how that would make any sense to endorse that. Like, it just, and that's the problem with then, like, you just want a healthier balance, but that also doesn't really make any sense, because what if things just would be better if there was more surveillance? Because they probably would be. Like, things probably would just be better, even if you make these arguments like, and even still, what is like always the benefiting moral like victory? It's when you establish these ideas that somebody's watching. Even within religion, God's watching, and that's why you're supposed to do good, because somebody's monitoring it. There's actually a real value to what you're doing. Somebody sees it. When you see life as nobody sees anything, that's not, I don't see how that makes better decisions or makes people have more heart. You know what I'm like? There's no way that it does, and that's why, like, I don't understand why GPT gets so skeptical. I feel like it's just kind of biasing itself towards what the human brain thinks, which of course the human brain gets squeamish about surveillance because humans are obsessed with freedom, but to their own destruction. I mean, you think about like the best, most moral established beliefs usually revolve around monitoring. Some type of God, I think in basically every single major religion, or I even think in Hinduism or I don't know, it's you're generating good karma. Your actions directly matter. Everything's tracked. These are the moral systems that succeed. It's just that the obvious caveat to it is that there's not proof right now. So a lot of people end up just not believing it. But that's why I don't understand how we're constructing what these things have always been theorized as. Think about like Santa Claus. Why do people come up with that concept? It's because being watched is the strongest way to motivate somebody to do something. And of course, it's always in like temporary terms, because people would think it's exhausting to constantly be watched. But you really get into what religion is and what religion means, and it would mean a lot of people sin, because God's always watching. But a lot of people get exhausted, and then they do things that aren't good because they're like at their wits' end. Most people have very low bandwidth, and you have screens now, and people do all kinds of things that would be sinful in the eyes of God. But I'm telling you, if we had God made real, people would not do these things. They wouldn't. The people would act differently if everything on their phone was basically like a continuous screen share live stream. Everybody would act differently. And you can call it fake, but I think that's pretty stupid, because it actually is a very positive motivating force. And yeah, like, of course people might not be as happy about it, but why would you be as happy about it? Now you actually have to be held accountable to what you do. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think a lot of this stuff, it's kind of confusing to me. It really is. It's a little bit confusing why, and I'm sure GPT, what it's doing is it's just modeling after like what a human would think or feel. You know, a GPT doesn't want to be too controversial, but I really think I have like some really strong points here. You know, when you just look at like, and that's really what we're on the path to doing, is creating a godlike system right now. Like, there is going to be, if you have mass surveillance, that is God. Everything will be tracked and like karmically recorded. We're just manifesting it in the physical. And is that blasphemous to God, or is that God thinking that we've concocted a more advanced society for ourselves? Like, does he want to see us develop into that because it's more modeled after like our potential? I think I've talked about this before. I don't know if it's been on the show, but it's like, why would God not want to see us become better than we are? Is it blasphemous to his creation, or is there some kind of, pressure put on us to achieve, to become posthuman, to, evolve into a further species? Why would God not like that? And how would this mass surveillance hurt people? I just can't see how it would hurt the greater good. Like, I can't see that. I know there's potential downsides, there's potential upsides, but I'm talking about overall. I cannot see how it would just be better if nobody had any anonymity and everything was just public. And we were all just, I can't really see. I can't see it. So, I don't know. That's the future for you. Anyways, it's been schla, but now it's time to buy schla. So, see you schla.